On today's Relationship Innovation episode, EJ and I share yet another difficult moment.
I'll be like, okay, I screwed up. I'm sorry. I apologize. And then you keep needling on me.
I'm working on that. But how we use our skills to develop more compassion and understanding. I said, have a great podcast. I am out of here.
And Tarah was like, no, I can come back. We got to talk about this. And I didn't get into, I can't believe that Tarah's doing all this. I turned the mirror inward.
So that we don't get stuck in these patterns like we know so many couples do. We know you will get a lot out of it. Give it a listen.
We're open to each other's experience.
We'll be able to look at each other and be like, oh yeah, that thing is happening. Hello, all, and welcome to the Relationship Innovation Podcast. I'm Tarah Kerwin.
And my name is EJ Kerwin.
And today, like so many episodes we've had on our show, we're just going to be real because, difficult times continue to happen. We continue to get through them by using skills, not all the time, but most of the time. And we feel like that's what truly our listeners love, like to hear that we are imperfect and we go through really difficult things and we know we're like a lot of other couples. And then here's the strategies on how we got through it.
There's just so much going on, there's just so much going on. We're a family of 6 people, blended family. Kids got things going on crazy. We got an oldest kid getting ready to definitely head to college next year. We have our professions. Mm-hmm. We have, just everything going on. And that's all sort of, that's just all in the background. Mm-hmm. That's just constant. That's like a non-negotiable of all the inner workings of life. And then a really, sort of difficult dynamic appears in your family or in your relationship. And it's like, how do you manage it? How do you try to do it in a good way?
Because I think at first it just feels like, oh, we're really good. We're doing a great job keeping this team together with all the moving parts. So then when we have our arguments, fights, whatever, it just creates such a disruption in the flow of things. I don't know for you, but last week, I had to cancel 3 hours of podcast recordings because I can't just show up when I'm emotionally devastated. That's how I felt. I couldn't stop crying. For me, I had to cancel my entire morning, which is significant because we don't normally cancel mornings. And it was just such a disruption. Now, did we come back in that morning and process it and heal and learn so much about each other? Yes, but it still was very disruptive.
Well, yeah. And I think it's we canceled a few hours of our podcast recording, our work, but it's there's no escape from it. It's like we were in the middle of a really difficult, heated moment between the two of us. It's highlighting some stuff that's going on in our family that's super challenging. Mm-hmm. And so what we want to do today is first, I think in the big sense is just sort of normalize the fact that everybody out there, we all have our own story and we have our own stressors. And I know I don't know anybody maybe who's just yeah, my life is just cake. It's just super easy.
If it is, call in.
Yeah.
Give us an email. We want to interview you.
Yeah. How did you get your life to be so chill? Because that's just not our reality. And it's not the reality. I could name off 5 friends, and tell you their story, and it would be very different than our story. But it's for them, I think the stakes are just as high, and it's just as stressful.
Right. So let's start with. I don't want to take too long sharing kind of what happened, but
why not?
Well, so let's just say it all started on a Friday morning around 6:15 a.m.
Yeah.
Right? EJ's at the gym. I'm trying to get the kids ready so I could go to the gym by 7 and you could come home and drive them to school. And I don't want to tattletale on my daughter, but let's just say she did something that was not cool.
She got in trouble.
And I was super angry about it because it's just not okay. And so I was angry and, she was crying, but I was like, listen, you have to do your homework. So, I know it's like 6:30 in the morning and we're rushing, but sit down and do your homework. So then EJ pulls in from the gym.
I'm all on my post gym high. I'm feeling good, ready to take on the day.
And as soon as EJ pulls up, like Mia just starts sobbing again. Because normally, right, we've pointed out that we have this like little triangle going on where EJ's the rescuer, I'm like the persecutor, and Mia's the victim. And we kind of rotate in those little triangles.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she starts crying and I'm like, are you kidding me? Oh, whatever. So I go outside to talk to EJ. I'm just like letting you know this is what happened. I'm very angry. It's not okay. They're doing their homework now. Like, let's just leave it.
Yeah. And so, I walk in the house and, we're one of these dynamics is that we're really working on with some help, is me having Tara's back, not getting split. And because that's the most normal thing in the world that kids are going to try to do is they're going to, they're naturally, instinctively going to kind of try to find a way to play the parent dynamic. And I'm definitely the more sympathetic when, I think it's a little bit of a daddy-daughter thing as well. And so I want to come in and maybe be a little tough, right? And I start to say something and Tara's like, no, I got this handled, like just, go take your shower and get ready and let's just get out of here. And so I'm like, okay. And so I went totally into, which is a comfortable place for me, into just like, okay, problem solver. I just got to get everybody going in the directions they have to go in the next like 15 minutes and just get out of here.
Well, and for me, so when I'm angry, and I was not out of my window of tolerance, but I was definitely angry. Like, I'm not one to just like let it be known I'm angry. Like, I have to keep like, I can't believe this happened. Like, that's what I'm working on. Like, I can't just keep doing that to this poor 10-year-old. Like, I can't believe this. You better be scared. I am so angry right now. So like, I just can't let it go. And then I think EJ, I can't speak for you, but that something happens for you when I continue to like go in and say how angry I am.
Well, I just see I see that it's the message has already been through. Like the kid who got in trouble is already knows they've been in trouble. I also, it's, a little bit of, I don't know if you call it transference or whatever. I mean, that happens with us sometimes where like when you're really mad at me, I'll be like, okay, I screwed up. I'm sorry. I apologize. And then you like keep like needling on me. Like,
I'm working on that.
I can't believe that. And so, but then also, and we'll get to this. It also reminds me a lot of like what I went through as a kid, in that I really struggled in school. I didn't like it. I didn't do well. And it caused a lot of conflict within my family.
Okay, so basically, fast forward, EJ takes the kids. I'm like a wreck, but I have to come in here to do a podcast episode. And, I'm crying and I'm just like in my mind, I'm like, I'm allowed to be angry because I could feel that EJ was mad that I was angry, or I didn't know that was my story. I'm like, I'm allowed to be angry. My anger is okay. I am learning this in therapy. Like, I am allowed to express my anger. So I get into our studio. And we have literally like 3 minutes before we're going to be interviewed, right, from some guy. And I was like, EJ, I just want you to know that I feel like my anger is okay to express. And EJ said, well, I feel like there's more skillful ways to handle it. And I was done. I walked out of this podcast room.
Walked out of this
place. I said, have a great podcast. I am out of here. And I went and I got in the car and I was just sobbing. Like, what does that even mean? And so EJ canceled our podcast.
Canceled it. And then, I mean, this is where we get into, we've come a long way.
Yeah.
Right? Because I called Tara up and I said, no, look, we're not doing the podcast. Like, if you want to meet up in a few hours or whatever. I was kind of, because in the past, when we have these fractures, we don't come back together super quickly. I mean, it's not like it's days or anything, but it's definitely can be hours. And Tara was like, no, I can come back and we got to talk about this. And that's huge, because that's the beginning of seeing like that there's a lot of growth going on below the surface with us. And it's also something that like a lot of times I've worked with clients before where one of the primary areas of conflict is one person, when they get into fights, wants to just fracture and get away for like literally like a day or two, doesn't want to talk about it. And the other's like, I need to solve this problem. And we have to work towards it getting closer and closer to proximity, right? Because it's a win-win that we had a conflict, but we came back together and talked about it. So we've used ways like, I'm sure Tara, when she walked away, she can tell you what she did. I sat in my chair. I took deep breaths. I tried to get my heart rate down. I looked at what I had done, and I didn't get into, I can't believe that Tara's doing all this. Like, I turned the mirror inward, which is something that we talk to our couples a lot about. Like, if you do have a conflict and you have that pull apart, that timeout, that code word is a tool we use, that you use that time not to stay in your story about how the other person is crazy and is totally wrong, but that you look at yourself. And so I began that process of looking at myself.
So I came back and I was like, my message was still very clear. Like, my anger is okay. Help me understand what you mean by skillful anger, because I'm not always going to be able to, I don't even know what that means. I know what being out of my window of tolerance means and not reacting from that place, but I don't know what skillful anger is. What I do know is in those moments when I have anger, which anger is okay, that I need you to accept me in that moment. And so, after talking and processing and me feeling like I'm crazy, that my anger is not okay, we were able to get to this very like subconscious, unconscious play that happens where I'm angry and I can feel EJ judging me or being afraid of it or something. And then I feel like I'm a really bad person, like I'm a monster.
Yeah, I mean, it came back for me. I originated the process of just looking inward, of just like settling myself down. But that sort of laid the groundwork for when we began to talk about it. And I was able to, even though, I mean, one thing that happens in our dynamic is the anger began with one of our kids, and then it sort of transfers over to me. And because you were at that point very angry with me.
Right.
And I was able to sort of like be with it, not get super defensive, not get super judgmental about her anger, but instead like talk through what happens for me. And what happens for me in those moments with in this case, one of the kids. And then also, I think when the anger's pointed towards me is it just reminds me so much of being a kid and knowing I screwed up, because I did, I would blow shit off, and I wouldn't do stuff, and I wouldn't study, and I'd lie and say I was getting a B and I was getting a D. And then just having like all this like intense anger aimed at me and really formulating a pretty negative relationship in childhood with one of my parents, where I didn't feel good for a very long time. And I had this like fear that is going to happen with Tara and one of our kids. And maybe also like, and I think you would agree with this, like unconsciously sort of joining with one of our kids, because I relate so deeply to, like, it's not easy for her. Like, like we have other kids in our family who like barely have to try, and they get like 98s and 100s on everything. And it's not easy for this other one. And I had the same thing. I didn't have a sibling that was like that, but like I had my best friend, like we would take the same test. We'd study for the same amount of time. He'd ace it and I'd get a C. And so I relate to that fact of like, like school sucks. Like, yeah, like why not cheat?
But here's like the important message is, had we not processed this out, this moment would continue to happen in various ways over and over and over, because now I understand, oh, when I'm angry and I'm yelling at the kids, like, yes, that's still okay. I want my kids to know that mommy is mad, but that also triggers something so much deeper for you, right? And it's scary for you. So now I can get better at understanding why that happens. And it's not really about me that I'm a bad person or that I'm a monster, and that my anger is okay. However, it can be more skillful. But if we would not have that conversation, we would not have gone to that deeper message. I wouldn't be able to have had compassion. I would just be like, wow, I still can't be me. Like my whole life, I wasn't able to have feelings. And now but I didn't, because I believe in you. I believe in us. I believe that we can make it through difficult conversations. What's happening right now?
Well, I'm just thinking it's not, like when you said scared, like it's scary for you. It's not scary for me. So I guess it's like when you feel like somebody, and this is an interesting thing, when somebody like labels something and it doesn't feel right, it leaves you like in this like place like where I kind of separated there from Tarah for a little bit, because I'm thinking through my head. It's not like I'm not scared of you. And it's not just you, it's a lot of people. Like, I just have issues with anger. Like, I just have such like, I don't like the way it presents. Like, I just don't like the way it presents. And not that I don't raise my voices at the kids or get angry. I for sure get angry, but I guess I have a hard time like with what feels like out of control anger.
Right.
Like my perception, like when I see anger on your part that seems out of control, like I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it. And it sucks because you're right. Like then it sets up that whole thing with you of like, when did you ever get to be angry when you were a kid? You never got to be angry. It was completely unsafe to be angry.
Yeah.
And so like I quietly in my own way shut you down.
Yes. And I feel the shutdown. And that's what erodes emotional safety. But we came back and we're processing it, right? And that's the most important thing, because I said, help me understand what is out of control for you versus me. And we have very different ways. Like out of control to me is like slamming doors and raging and screaming. And I was just angry and kept coming back like, I'm so mad right now. And so we have to understand, because I don't want to be out of control for sure, right? Have I lost my stuff in the past? Sure. But I'm working on myself. And I said this to EJ, and I think this is really important because we have to remind each other. I said, EJ, thank you for sharing. Like I had no idea like that, all that comes up for you, and it totally makes sense. I said, but one thing you've got to know is even when I have not been my best mommy self, like we repair always with our children. Hey, was not my best mommy moment. I'm really sorry. I'm going to work on that. Like we in our family have always taken individual accountability for the sake of our whole family, for the sake of just healing and growing and not letting kids think it's their fault all the time. But there is a place where anger can be allowed, because that's the thing. If it's not and we're afraid of it, we're going to keep going in those insecure attachment styles that we've talked about. And now we truly can't be free, right? And one thing we're trying to do here with our podcast, with all the work we do with couples, is how do we feel free to be whoever we need to be in this relationship, obviously with boundaries. And that we help each other through it, right? Because EJ wasn't home that morning. Had EJ been home, he probably would have been like, oh my gosh, hon, I got this now. Like you go take your 10 minutes, do whatever. But we didn't have each other to piggyback off on. So mine did escalate. Again, I don't feel like it was to the point of out of control, but you did. And so then that dynamic happened, and look at us now a few days later.
Yeah.
We're more connected.
Yeah.
But it was a really difficult morning.
So we just went really deep into the content of what happened between the two of us, and then sort of how we sorted it out. And I think like this is like one of the problems that couples have is it's so complex. There's so much going on, right? Like, so there is just on the most like sort of surface level, just two parents trying to parent and having having different styles, you know? And then there's our baggage. You know, there's our baggage of just like
stuff. We got
stuff.
A lot of baggage.
Yeah, you know, that we each have our own like childhood stuff that is right there below the surface. And most people, when they come into counseling, they don't either realize it or they don't really buy into that exists. I can tell you, I've worked with hundreds, thousands of people. It definitely exists.
It exists.
Yeah. And then
we are wounded children.
Yeah. And then there's just like straight up communication skills. You know, there's just the ability, you know, we have like in our program or in our method, we have this whole 3-part series on communication. It's just like some basic skills like active listening, like developing the ability to really hear a person, not just be sitting and listening to their words and formulating your response, but actually really be listening. And if we can't do that in non-activated moments, which a lot of people aren't able to actively listen, even in non-activated moments, they're already formulating their own opinion and thinking about how they're going to respond. You know, if I'm not able to do that, then how in the world am I going to do it in a highly activated moment where a lot is on the line, like our kids, we're in the middle of a business day, we're arguing. Like I had to be able to listen in those moments, to hear what Tara was saying, to even when she's saying like, I'm okay being angry.
That was like my little girl protesting.
To not be going like, you know, having a bunch of words in my brain of being like, okay, she wants to have the ability to be angry. Okay, I hear you. It's okay to be angry. So
it's what happens for you, what happens for me, and how do we both listen to it with compassion and actively listening so we truly get each other's experience.
Yeah. And how do we as a couple also have all these separate aspects of being in a family, of being together as a couple, and work on them individually, you know, that we have to make sure our values in parenting are lined up and that we talk about them, that we talk about it's okay to be angry. But what does that mean? You know, when
do you know you're going to get out of your window of tolerance? So the message is done being heard by whoever is on the receiving end.
Yes. Then how do you begin to notice in activated moments, what is your old baggage that's popping up? You know, how do you just recognize it yourself and then be able to communicate it to your partner so that they can have some sort of empathy with you? Mm-hmm. And then the whole just more meta thing of like, how do we work on having healthy communication broadly across everything, where we really listen to each other, we make eye contact, we give our full attention. You know, we reflect what we hear. If Tara says something to me, I literally repeat it almost verbatim and say, is that right? Did I hear that right? So that she feels heard.
It's such a, and I'll always say, like, if it doesn't feel right, just help me understand, like change it to what it feels like for you. Because it's like, it's your experience, not mine, but it indirectly impacts both of us in our relationship dynamic. And so we have to be able to understand each other's experience, very different, but now it's shared, right? And then there's this psychology term called shared emotional experiences. When we're able to share in those emotional experiences, even though they're very different, this is how we develop emotional safety. Because it's like I can have my own experience and it's okay, and my partner will still love me and he'll want to know about my experience. But so many people are like, no, you need to experience what I'm experiencing. And it's like, that's not what happens. I'm not in your body or your brain, and you're not in mine, and you're not in my childhood, and I'm not in yours.
No, that is right on, because that at the end of the day was what allowed us to have some resolution, you know, an hour or two after it all came down. And it took a lot of work, but I think we truly were open to each other's experience, that I was truly open to the fact that it's got to be okay for you to get angry, that you're working on how you express your anger, that you repair if you need to, that I was open to all of that and I heard you. And then you were open to like some of my struggles around anger. And
I didn't even know, like I knew, but I didn't know in that moment. I just felt like I was the punishing person, that I was a bad person. No idea, like under your guardedness or avoidance was actually like a little boy really like feeling threatened, maybe.
Yeah, overwhelmed. It's so overwhelming.
Yeah.
That's what I remember of like just similar circumstances to that, of like getting caught doing something and then somebody just like, coming at you, and then it would be like, okay, it's over. Like I took what, I got in trouble, and then again, and just how like I just remember just feeling like
you
really
married
just
your
like,
parent. JK. It's what we think, but we don't want that. We really didn't. We just we repeat dynamics.
And so the beauty of this is through us embracing the tools that we offer couples through the podcast, through our relationship renovation at home program, through couples that work with our therapists here in town. Through that, we went through a very intense, let's call it an argument. I mean, we had a lot of conflict between the two of us, and it was mostly resolved within a couple hours.
High five.
High five from afar. We had a nice weekend.
We did.
I didn't think about it again in the context of being frustrated with Tara. I merely thought of it in the context of like us as co-parents of one of our kids.
Well, and here's the biggest thing. We unstuck it. It's not stuck anymore.
Yeah.
So now the next time that feeling happens, we'll be able to look at each other and be like, oh yeah, that thing is happening. Because we have an understanding now. So now we're not going to get stuck in this pattern.
Yeah.
But we've been stuck in this pattern before. We didn't know what it quite was until
because anytime you sweep it underneath the rug, anytime you have a moment and you don't fully process your way through it, that's why you go to couples counseling, is because you go back and you reprocess problems that are still stuck, because you are doomed to repeat it over and over and over
in very different ways.
Yeah, because you don't know any other way than doing it in an instinctive way, because the way we did it was much more intentional. We slowed it down. It was uncomfortable. It's not fun to have those conversations.
No, it was.
No.
But we do it because we know how important it is, and that we'll be able to get through the uncomfortable, right? Instead of just sweep it under the rug. And that's because we trust the process.
Yeah. And that's, we had this discussion before we started the podcast today also about like, for me, like, and I want to talk more about this in another podcast, but just like why we do what we do. And this is really it, is that we have this person we love. I love Tara with all of my heart, and I adore her, and I'm just so blessed to have her as my wife. And yet we have these moments with each other that are so like painful and hard. Mm-hmm. And we really want to help people deal with that. We want to help people have these realizations and understand each other better and understand themselves better and suffer less, because the big winner in this whole thing is our kids too. Like our kids, because we're going to be more skillful the next time in dealing with what is inevitable, is they're going to struggle and they're going to make mistakes, and they're going to need help. And if we don't do our work, then they're doomed to sort of repeat it again, themselves in their own lives.
This is why we do what we do. Yeah. Thank you. That was really nice to hear. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being such a great partner and getting so angry.
My anger is okay. So Jen, maybe if you're listening to this podcast and you're just like, gosh, I wonder how my partner experiences my anger or vice versa, or how does even anger play out in your relationship, especially if it's like around one of the kids, or just kind of having this conversation around it. Because again, yes, there are skillful ways to be in anger, but anger is okay. And so we have to understand what it is and go a little deeper with it. So, because at the root of anger is suffering. So yeah, have that conversation. Let us know how it goes.
Yeah.
Let us know if there's any insights you've, come
I
up
just
with.
had another insight.
Oh, do tell. Oh,
Well, because you were saying anger and I was thinking, yeah, like big emotions. Then I was thinking like, God, I have trouble with like all kinds of big emotions. Cause sometimes like you're like unbridled joy about something like, whatever, like something, our kid, even at a game, and one of our kids does this to you as well. Like Tara gets so excited,
yeah.
like even like excitement and stuff, like we all have like patterns of reactivity to something, and even like big happy emotions are kind of weird for me.
Ooh, see, this could be another podcast because EJ, you're getting in touch with all your emotions. Here we go. Big emotions, next podcast. Love it. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for letting us do what we do, which is be imperfect humans trying to be in this crazy life and raise a healthy, beautiful, loving, connected family as much as we can, and to cultivate the skills to do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, and if this is just stuff that's resonating with you, if you're like, yeah, gosh, like I do want to delve deep into a way to understand myself and my partner better, go to our website, relationshiprenovation.com. There's a little tab for online programs and check out our first lesson. We throw it at you for free. It has video. It has like a lesson that you do with your partner. It's just a fantastic way to grow together, to sort of iron out the inevitable wrinkles that we have in our relationship.
And we're really excited because we're actually going to start having more couples on sharing their experience, whether it's in office or the at-home program. And so we're going to be able to, like, yes, I love talking to EJ, but sometimes I'm like, I'm so over hearing all of me talk. We're going to start having a lot more couples on that we're going to be interviewing and sharing their stories too. So I think that's going to be like just really cultivating this community of like, we can get through this.
Yeah. And if you're interested in being a couple on our show, like send us an email, info@relationshiprenovation.com. And our goal is to sort of get your story, but then look at maybe one aspect of your relationship and maybe sort of teach you a tool from our Relationship Renovation at Home program.
Ooh, I love that.
And another idea is that we're going to, if you come on the show and you're willing to share, that we'll gift you the Relationship Renovation at Home program that then you can go through, and maybe you'll come back afterwards and tell us about how it went.
Absolutely. So again, thank you for listening. As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Bye-bye.
Bye.